I knew I was destined for bigger things, and I knew God had always had a purpose for my life. I didn't know what that purpose was. It doesn't matter how much faith you have. Nobody, nothing is coming to save you. You save you. You save you by doing the work. When you have such tragic loss in your life, it's like a door slams on you, and all the things that you used to identify with, or the labels that were placed on you, or the things that you thought people wanted from you, really don't matter anymore. It may give you a temporary source of energy. It may give you a temporary high. But until you get aligned and you understand who you are, where your heart center is, you're going to continue to plug into everything else in this world that's not going to fulfill you, that's not going to give you the peace and the joy. That's really what you're after. And that's where freedom lives on the other side.
You can dream, and things can be a reality. They're only impossible because somebody else probably told you it was impossible, or you haven't seen somebody else do it, so it feels impossible, but it doesn't mean it's actually impossible. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Inspired Authority. Today's guest is a woman who has walked through fire and chose to rise of the remaining ashes. Stephanie Martin is a speaker, author of But God, and founder of Sovolution, a movement helping women transform pain into purpose through truth, alignment, and spiritual healing. After navigating trauma, divorce, and the unimaginable loss of her only son, Cade, Stephanie faced a choice: be buried in grief or be reborn through it. She chose to rise. Today, we're talking about grief, identity, faith, and what it actually means to turn pain into purpose. Stephanie, welcome to Inspired Authority.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
We're so happy to have you. So, will you start with just giving everyone an overview of who you are behind all the titles and the labels and beyond the experience that you lived? Who is Stephanie?
I would love to tell you I know exactly who I am, but I really identify with being a blank slate. Aside from labels, I do wear a few proudly, and one of them is Gemma. I have a now 3-year-old grandson, and I'm a new wife. I'll celebrate my second wedding anniversary in May. And of course, I am a mama to an angel that's in heaven now. And of course, I'm a friend, a daughter, and all the other labels society wants to place on me.
So Stephanie, thanks for that overview. Can you share with everybody about your story and how you got to where you are today?
You know, I mean, as we even travel back to when you were asking me kind of who I am, I would have before identified as the successful businesswoman who's on the grind and climbing the corporate ladder and doing all the things that you're supposed to do, showing up with your masculine energy and wanting to be seen and heard. And I think that when you have such tragic loss in your life, it's like a door slams on you, and all the things that you used to identify with, or the labels that were placed on you, or the things that you thought people wanted from you, really don't matter anymore. I mean, you literally, to your point, when you introduced, it is ashes. And, I can think back from a faith perspective, and it's all the but God moments that I've had in my life. And, we all walk through grief at any given point. We just don't identify it as we play this comparison game with everyone. And so we don't give ourselves a safe place to identify that their journey has grief in it, whether it's identity loss or divorce or all the different things. And so I guess for me, as far as my story is concerned, underneath all the success, all the survival, I grew up as a Gen Xer. And so a latchkey kid, we grew up way too fast. Our parents had to start working at that time. And so you just became the responsible one. And becoming a responsible one at a very young age also roots you in a lot of codependencies, because it's where your worth is tied, what you can do for everyone else you have value and you're cheered on, and it's what's meant with good intentions just imparts something in a young Stephanie that went in, and I'm very thankful for the journey. I've had to remind myself that it was my parents' first time on this planet going through this journey, and I have to give myself grace for that too. It's my first time on earth in this human experience. So as far as, I've been on this earth for a little while now, and so my story is probably pretty long, but to give you a brief synopsis of a timeline, I married when I was young because it's just what you did. You married your high school sweetheart. You went to school, went to college, or you went to work. I did both right out of the gate. And so it was a slow roll for me to get my degree because I was still struggling with, I want to be this wife and this mom, and I still want to climb the corporate ladder and, all the different things. And so I was married till I was 32. And if I'm really honest, that's when life really opened up for me because I didn't know who I was even at 32. I'd just been a girlfriend, a wife, and then a mom, grinding in the corporate world and in a man's world, honestly, because you had to fight to be seen and heard. I started out as an executive assistant because I wasn't afforded any other opportunities in the beginning. So it's just like you kind of have to prove your worth along the way, even the one that you're kind of doing all the work. But it wasn't until I was 32 and kind of a blank slate that I probably went through my 20s and my 30s, those first few years, and had a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. Balanced being a mom, still climbing in corporate America, and having what I used to call my bad girl weekends, right? Like having friend time and going out and doing things I probably should have been doing in my 20s, but was doing them, in my 30s. And so it wasn't until 2018 that life got really real. I divorced because my husband at the time was rooted in depression and alcoholism. And I really, I tell people all the time, I didn't leave him because I didn't love him, but I had to choose myself and love me more. And I wanted an example for my son. And especially having a dad that was an addict growing up. And so you I don't want to say I shamed parts of my life, but you kind of do because you feel like you always have to have something to prove. And in 2018, I lost my ex-husband to suicide. And so suicide became a real word in our home, and watching your child grieve, and the saying is true, there's no pain like kid pain. So that's when grief really hit me at that point. And so I continued to build a career, build a life around all of those things. Really, that's when my healing journey actually really began. Went and really dove deep into an immersive program and dumped a whole lot of things. And to me, it was like Pandora's box opened. And so it was just a whole new world. And I feel like I've been a blank slate a couple of times in my life. And it's like, okay, ashes to build something bigger and better. Here's another foundation for you. Go build it. And it's just that journey. And I'm sure that you've heard this before. We're on our own stairway to heaven. And so just when you think that you get there, you get to that point, it's like it all feels like it crumbles down, but it's really not. It's just how you choose to pick up those pieces and build something anew.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that story. There were a few things that I wanted to talk about. You had mentioned at the top of the conversation people not recognizing grief. And I think that there are times where people experience grief and you've got two options. As you have, it's okay, what are we going to do with this? And how are we going to, what's the new mindset? It's mindset, right? And then you have people who really do let it define the rest of their lives. I think it's important that we acknowledge those times of grief, but how do we move forward and how do we rise from those ashes? Something about me is I lost my mom when I was like 12. So I was raised by a single dad, and certainly I've got three older sisters. we've all taken it different ways. We all have lived different lives through what was pretty traumatic, you know? So I guess what I want to understand from you is when you say, because you've said this, you only meet grief where you've met yourself. Can you help me understand what does that mean?
Yeah. I think grief is, it's a mirror. Really everything is a mirror when there's something, it's through pain. And there is no movement without pain in life, period. I mean, whether it's touching something, a needle, or burning yourself or something, you move, right? And so we just don't acknowledge the emotional pain to make us move. Sometimes we just get to stay stuck. And I say get to because it's a choice, right? And so to your point, when I was at my lowest of lows, I had a choice in that moment to become bitter or better. And I believe that grief just has a way of exposing who you are. And it's okay to say, I don't know. I don't know who I am. But seemingly, we won't give ourselves permission to do that because we've placed all these labels on ourselves. And if I do this, then it's a sign of weakness. If I do that, then I'm no longer this. And so we even sometimes wear that grief and trauma and the things that have happened in our life like a badge of honor, like it's our sole identity. And I was bound and determined. I mean, there's a lot of people that want to slap that, oh, grief, that's the only thing that Stephanie has to offer. And it's like, I'm so much bigger and so much more powerful than my grief journey. Is my grief journey the biggest chapter and the most painful chapter in my book of life? To date, absolutely. And I can't imagine anything else that would be worse than the pain that I've walked through with that. But I also it's through my own awareness and through me holding a mirror up in my own life that I had a choice. And it's through my own awareness that I had the choice. And it was either I'm going to spew and bleed on everybody else that didn't cut me, or I'm going to choose to rise to this and turn my own pain into something that I'm very passionate about. And that's helping women just like you and anyone that needs to have a safe place to stand in their truth. And it's messy as hell. This world is so dark, and we can either be a light in this world or we can let this world dim our light. And that's it in a nutshell. You can't outrun it. Life is going to keep on lifing. You have a choice. And I feel like oftentimes we want to walk in the victimhood, never acknowledging that we were victimized. We just walk in such victimhood and then play the comparison game. Or we minimize it to be a martyr and say, well, at least my pain's not as big as theirs, and at least this is not that. And it's like, but you never gave yourself permission to acknowledge the pain that you're walking through. And you just stuff and stuff and stuff. And we know what happens when you stuff and stuff. It's going to take that one straw that breaks the camel's back, and you're going to explode on everybody. Now your heart's hurt. Now you feel bad for spewing on somebody that didn't hurt you. And it's this vicious cycle rather than learning to take the pause.
Wow, there's so much to unpack in terms of this conversation. How did grief reveal parts of you that were hidden? Like, who were you before you lost your son? And how did this grief reveal things that you weren't aware of in terms of who you were before that happened?
Yeah, that's a deep question. I think for me, because I was soul tied and I was solely tied to being a mom. It was my most prized label, title. He was my biggest worry, my biggest excuse for playing small because I needed to be a mom. I needed to do this. And if I wasn't working, then I needed to be a mom. Oh, I can't do that because I got to be a mom. I need to be at everything. I need to do everything. And while all of those things are true, I had no balance. I had no balance. It was either all or nothing. And it was kind of that all or nothing thinking. And while I've always been capable and successful and I've shown up as this, well put together person, on the inside, I was breaking. And honestly, losing Cade exposed that I didn't know who the hell I was. I mean, I didn't, because I knew I was destined for bigger things, and I knew God had always had a purpose for my life, but I didn't know what that purpose was. And it was just kind of, you were constantly searching, okay, God, is this it? This is all I have to offer. I'm going to just keep grinding in this corporate world. And yeah, I collect a raise and get the accolades and do all the things, high five. And oh, you're such a good mom. How do you balance it all? And I mean, I wouldn't even allow myself really to date because I didn't want anybody else around my son. So I didn't have any real fulfillment or joy in my life. So it was kind of joyless. And, you had fun with your friends because you knew that that was guaranteed fun, but you would never go and do anything that was adventurous or spontaneity or anything like that because I was mom, So I don't know if that fully answers your question, but I think really allowing things that happen in your life to really hold up that mirror and for you to get really honest with yourself. And that means shining a lot of light into your darkness. And fun? No, absolutely not fun. But I can say, as I continue to heal, because I don't ever believe that this side in this dimension we're fully healed, because I think that's the whole purpose of soul evolution, is that we have this human experience and it's our soul that continues to evolve, whether it's here in this human form or on the other side. I feel like we continue to, in an energy form, grow and evolve with things. And it takes being vulnerable. It takes having faith. I think that there's two F words that you can identify with, and that's faith and fear. And both are, the believing in the unknown. You just have to choose which one that is. And so I've chosen my faith time and time again in moments in life where I could have completely been so angry at God and blamed him for everything. It was all I had to go and plug into to give me source, to give me light, to give me energy, electricity, all the things that I needed to just even sustain this human form. Because I will be honest, when I lost Cade, I begged God to take me. It's like, I don't even want to be here. Like, this is the life that you're going to give me. And he's like, let me remind you first that he was mine first. So stop being selfish. And your mission is so much bigger than just your mom title. And that was a hard pill for me to swallow because all I ever identified was, I just want to be a good mom. I want, when I'm on the other side, for him to say, well done. Well done. You did fantastic at being a mom. And he's like, well, I'll take that away from you too. Your mission is bigger.
This podcast, Inspired Authority, this brand, Inspired Authority, is all built on identity and really understanding who you are before what you do. And there's a lot of components that go into that, but everything that you're saying with faith and with God and with looking in the mirror, this is all aligned with Inspired Authority's mission and purpose. So thank you for being here. This is truly something, like, this conversation is something that I think will help a lot of people in terms of realizing that what you do shouldn't drive your life. It's the impact that you want to make based on the mission and the purpose that you have within here, but you have to truly understand who you are before you can, pursue that mission. The title, But God, it feels super powerful. And I know in my life, I look up. So what does that phrase mean to you?
For me, whenever, I was searching for, because this was a healing project for me, because it was published on my son's birthday and I wanted to give life to something new. It was also my birth date, right? The date that I became a mom. And the only thing that ever made sense And the only thing that I continued to say is, but God, but God. Like when people would say, oh, you are handling this so well. And I'm like, no, but God. I mean, no, I'm not. Because if it were my choice, I'm telling you in human form, I would have ran because that's what I used to do. I was either rooted in my codependency and a doormat for everyone to walk on, or I'm running or exploding. Like there was no in between for me. And there are even decisions that I've made in my life where I'm like, okay, the only explanation is but God that something, didn't happen, or that I was in that situation and something, whatever it is. And even in moments of when there was a merger acquisition, when you're dealing in corporate America and you land somewhere else, I've never really worried. I've just, from that perspective, of course, when you're a mom and you're a single mom and, you're the sole breadwinner in your family. And then, there's a merger or acquisition that happens, which happens a lot in banking. You're like, oh gosh, what does this mean for me? What am I going to do? It's my only explanation that I ever had was, but God. And I've been very rooted as a Southern girl, rooted in my conditioning and programming of religion. And somehow, some way, I've always managed to just keep my relationship with God outside of the confines of the religious sector. And I believe it's when I started questioning or asking questions or whatever, they were always trying to make you feel small. Well, you don't have enough faith. Well, you don't trust. Well, you're trying to play God, or you're this. And I'm like, no, I just want to, it's a relationship. I should be able to ask the questions. And you're somebody that I think highly of authority, that gets to stand on a stage with a pulpit and tell your message. And again, another example of when I could have turned really bitter. And I did. I do believe that hurt people. And I think that there's a lot of people that are over churched in the sector, like the religious sector, not in the spiritual sector. And so, having faith doesn't mean that it erases everything. Having faith doesn't mean that it erases every tragedy. It doesn't mean that you're immune to anything. I think the myth is that God doesn't give you anything that you can handle. And honestly, it never says that anywhere in the Bible. What God promises is that I will be here, and he is going to give you more than you can handle, because he, creator, source, God, spirit, whatever you want to call it. I heard it today called Gus, and I thought, that's interesting. If you don't have a source to plug into, you're going to end up plugging into something, and it may give you temporary happiness. It may give you a temporary source of energy. It may give you a temporary high. But until you get aligned and you understand who you are, where your heart center is, you're going to continue to plug into everything else in this world that's not going to fulfill you, that's not going to give you the peace and the joy that you are. That's really what you're after. And that's where freedom lives on the other side. Because once you taste peace and joy, there's not one thing in this world that can take it away. Not one. Especially when you're plugged into your source, because he'll light you up from the inside out. And that's really what But God stood out for me. I'm not immune to anything. I'm not better than anything, but what I am is somebody that can be intentional about where I go to get my fuel.
I could cry. Seriously. I grew up Catholic, but it didn't resonate for like a long time until I was recent, like the last year or two. And when faith did enter the room, I noticed huge changes. As an example, I was super anxious all the time. And with you being in corporate as well, with corporate, it's like you feel out of control so much. Like, it's these authority figures telling you who you need to be, what you need to do, etc., etc. It wasn't until I started looking at God as my authority figure and I started releasing that anxiety, that fear, all of those just feelings to God and letting him determine my path and not all these other people outside determine my path, holy moly, did it change my life. And like everything. And I will tell people that if you're anxious, maybe you do need to have a talk with God. Maybe you do need to have some some type of outlet, like you're saying, some type of source that you can plug into, that you can release that negative energy, those feelings too. So that's why I'm like getting teary-eyed, because it's like I felt that firsthand and it's completely changed my life.
I will add, you know, there's a lot of people that, for whatever reason, and I know why, or I can suspect why, right? It's mainly rooted in conditioning and programming of what you can do, can't do, or they've had church hurt, right? But one thing that we can do as human beings is surrender. Like, it's a choice to pick up every single burden. If you think and imagine that you have a backpack for life, right? And every morning that you get out of bed and you have a choice on what you put in that backpack, and you carry that around. And if every burden, everything bad that can happen is a rock, and you put that in your backpack, you are choosing to carry it around. And that's why I say through awareness comes choice. So even if you're at a crossroads with the spiritual sector or God or whatever it is that you want to call, you can surrender. And what I mean by surrender is put the backpack down. Why do you have to pick it up? What's going to happen if you choose to pick that up? Do you have to figure it all out? Do you have to be the one that's rooted, or does that give you value? Does that tell you you're worthy? Does that tell you you're enough? If you pick up that backpack, then I'm a martyr. I can do it. Instead of saying, this thing is too heavy and I can't carry it anymore. And if you are who you say you are, I'm leaving this right here. Turn it to ashes, do what you need to do with it, but I can't carry it anymore. And when I chose to do that, that's where my life changed. And again, another just by God moment.
Wow. That's so powerful. Whew. Just a second. Oh man. Something that I see a lot of is codependency, right? So in But God, you talk a lot about codependency and moving from codependency to courage. What was the wake up call there?
It's funny, when I went through my divorce, I went to therapy, and it was my second session with the therapist. And she said, mind you, I just got out of a 15-year relationship where I basically surrendered because that's what you did as a wife and did all the things. But inside, I was just like, I have a voice and I want to be heard and I want to. I go to this therapist. In my second session, she says, you have a codependency problem. And I said, the hell? I'm independent. I'm grinding. I'm a mom. I'm making all the things happen. I'm not dependent on anyone. And at the time, I had no idea what codependency was. She just said I was codependent on something. And I said, nope, slammed the door, never went back to therapy. So fast forward, I'm like, I'll figure this life thing out on my own. I would not recommend that. If you hear anything from my voice, I would not recommend that. Years went by. Okay. I had dated here and there, but I'd never really been in, I would say, a serious relationship. And I decided to give it a go in like 2015, 2016. It was around 2016. And met somebody who was great, seemingly all the things. And it started out as a friendship because they were going through a divorce and doing all these things. And I thought, oh, great, it's a friendship and it can mold into something wonderful. And we have a lot of parallels, and I understand I've been through divorce with kids. And fast forward 2 years in, it was exactly what I needed and what God intended, because I'm somebody that likes to touch the fire for whatever reason. I've tamed that, but seemingly in my life, it's like, oh, yeah, you want to tell me I can't do something? I'll show you that I can. And I found myself in a very emotionally borderline physical, abusive, narcissistic, off and on relationship. And it was incredibly toxic, something I'd tried to get out of numerous times. My worth was tied to being loved and wanting to be loved and all the things. And it was my son going and staying with his dad, which my son and I were thick as thieves. And when he said he wanted to go live with dad for a little while, I was like, what is happening? And I'm trying to get out of this relationship that I was in. It was just like love bomb, draw you back in, chew you up, spit you out. And it's just like your nervous system didn't have time to recover of anything. And it was in that moment that the biggest mirror of my entire life said, you're the problem. You're the problem. Your worth is tied to helping everyone else. You think that you can fix everybody else. You want control of everything and everybody else when you have control of nothing except for yourself, but you won't even look in the mirror. You won't even look in the mirror because it's not you. I mean, look at me. I'm doing everything. I'm trying to help this person. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. Look at me, and I'm holding it all together. And I have this job, and no one would even know anything's going on. No one would know that he destroyed my car, broke my phones, did all the crazy things that you hear about that you're like, how am I here? God, how am I here? What did I do so incredibly wrong that I'm here? I'm a strong, independent, successful woman, and I'm in this hellhole. How do I get out? And I slammed the door on the world and went inward. And it was, like I said, during that time that I also lost my ex-husband to suicide, was watching my kid grieve. And I just shut out the world and said, okay, I'm going inward and I'm going to figure this out. I don't know what that looks like. It was a lot of coaching programs. It was therapy. It was a lot of journaling. It was reading so that I didn't feel crazy, and knowing that, seeing other people, because I believe it's through other people's courage to talk about their truth and tell their story that we're encouraged to know that we're not alone, that your feelings are valid. And I went to a few CODA meetings, and it took my own courage and me being honest with myself to say, I can proudly say that I'm a recovering codependent.
Wow. You know, I just hear so many stories in your story, meaning I've had so many conversations with and so many experiences where a lot of these experiences come to light for people. And the fact that you're sitting here and saying you looked in, because so many people still, they have all these experiences and all these challenges and they're still looking out, and they're not looking here either. They're not looking here and they're not looking here. And so,
All they know, Laura, is I'm going to get my worth from someone else. I'm going to be validated. I'm going to be affirmed. I'm going to let everybody else in this world tell me who I am, what I'm supposed to be doing, and how I'm supposed to show up. And I equate that to your power card. If we look at life like we have our own deck or our own hand of cards that we get to play, you willingly get to give your power card away to people. And every time that you allow somebody else, because I love to hear, they made me do it. They have that much power and control over you that they made you do something. Well, they did X, Y, and Z. I'm not saying that what they did, and I again looked in the mirror. You still made a choice. It's through your own awareness that you get to choose how you're going to handle a situation. Do you want to give your power away and make them make you be the crazy person they say you are, or whatever other label that somebody wants to place on you, and draw you in and you give your power away to someone else? Or do you want someone to tell you who you are but yet you're fighting for freedom and peace, but you're letting everybody else tell you who you are, how you're supposed to show up, and what you should and ought to be doing. They should all over themselves. Like, you find peace on the other side of your chaos when you're willing to go inward.
Unfortunately, I think a lot of this, at least in my generation, I think in your generation too, like the future generations I have so much hope for, we were raised on validation. We were raised with people telling us, oh, I'm proud of you. Oh, don't do that. Making decisions for us. And so unfortunately, I think we were hard coded. Like you had mentioned earlier, like we were hard coded with these things that we as adults now have to work through and unlearn and adjust our thinking. Now, I think with the younger generations, they're starting to realize that, like, oh, no, no, no. Instead of saying, I'm proud of you, you should say, how do you feel about that accomplishment? Right? Like, it's helping kids to find their own validation versus, again, looking out here for validation. But I will say, I think that we grew up learning this shit. Let's just call it what it is. And now we have to work through that internally. You know, many women live misaligned for years. Like a lot of women still haven't kind of come to this realization that like this is an internal thing that we need to find our alignment, whether it be in marriages, whether it be in careers, friendships. I mean, there's so many places that you can just be totally misaligned. How do we know when we're out of alignment, and how do we fix it?
Yeah, yeah. I want to just touch on one of the things that you said. There's a lot of life that happens, and there's a lot of things that are not your fault that happen in life. But one thing that is certain, it is your responsibility to acknowledge it and to heal it. And I think that we can go through life numbing and making excuses for why we do the things that we do because it's easy. It's easy to blame your parents. It's easy to blame that person that hurt you. It's easy to say they made me do something rather than taking ownership of it. Because you didn't get to use it as an excuse of why you behave the way you behave. Well, I'm just that way. Well, that's why Soulvolution is such a movement for me, because it's like, so you're saying you're going to just stay stuck the rest of your life? Like you're not going to evolve into something more, better, or different? Like you're okay with who you are. Everything is working for you. Is it working? Because if it's not, you can continue to give your power away or you can go inward. Those are your choices. So it's not your fault. So acknowledge it for what it is. It isn't your fault. You're right. You're right. Do you feel validated now and affirmed? It wasn't your fault. But it is your responsibility if you want a different life. So as far as misalignment, I believe that we have an innate communication system that's within our body energetically. We have a nervous system that's within our body. And I believe that that's where a lot of disease comes from, because we have a lot of dis-ease in our body. I believe that there's a lot of things that are passed down generationally. And I don't just mean by words that are spoken. I mean on a cellular level. Just that may not even, again, it's not your fault, but you have to acknowledge it for what it is. But, I've heard in the past, well, I came from a great family. I don't know why I have all this anxiousness. I don't know why I'm this way. Nothing bad has happened to me, but I'm just anxious. And it's like, okay, then acknowledge it for what it is. That's a signal in your mind, your brain, your heart, your mind, your body, your soul to say something's out of alignment. If you look at your life as if you have this spine that is in your body and you're not willing to do the work, you're going to just keep on just playing small and small and small and small. Or you can stand up and know that you have an opportunity to align yourself. You speak your truth. But so often we want to walk in victimhood and blame everybody else, and it isn't even our truth. We don't allow ourselves to dream of the life that we want and desire and or should be able to have. We don't want to do the work to use the power that we have inside us to transmute anything. Like, we have the power to do that, but you don't do it alone. Yes, there's a lot of self-talk, self, but without faith. And just like, the Bible says, whether or not you want to believe in the Bible, Faith without works is dead. You have to do the work. It doesn't matter how much faith you have. No, nobody, nothing is coming to save you. You save you. You save you by doing the work. And when you are willing to do the work, you're willing to acknowledge, you're willing to say, these things are not my fault, but you're willing to take responsibility to heal, alignment happens organically. Then you can get rooted. Then you can start living the life that you truly desire and that you want. And it's all rooted in love and above. And let me tell you, love, it's not always rainbows and unicorns. Sometimes it's hard ass shit.
Whew, you are speaking so much value into the world right now. After trauma, women often shrink. You expanded. But you also set boundaries, and this is another big component with inspired authority, which is setting boundaries, taking stewardship of your time and your energy, and all of that is so critical into living a really fulfilling life. What boundaries did you have to set in order to protect yourself and your healing?
I will say that boundaries, what I've learned through my own journey, are permission for people to stay in my life. I think oftentimes people misinterpret what boundaries really are. They build walls and end up isolated instead of understanding what healthy boundaries are. And that is, again, it's not a rejection. If we are so afraid, if we establish a boundary, then that person might get mad at me. And again, rooted in codependency. They might get mad at me, or what if they judge me, or what if they're no longer my friend, or what if it causes chaos in our family? And, I say expectations and potential in other people, because you can't expect you out of other people. And oftentimes we do, expecting something ourselves out of someone else. Well, I would never do something like that. Well, they're not you. And so you have to have those clear cut boundaries in place to say, this doesn't work for me. Or when you did this, it made me feel this way, and I would rather feel this. Can we work on that together? And have an open, honest, hard conversations. You get to choose your hard. You can either have hard conversations or you can have a hard life and still have turmoil in your relationships. So you have to choose your hard. And then the other boundary that I don't have a problem with today is no. I don't have to explain myself. I don't have to tell you the why. It's just, no, that doesn't work for me.
Incredible. So now, a lot of people are probably thinking, I got a lot of broken pieces. Like, wow, this conversation is opening me up to like a lot of things in my own life that like, whoa, I need to work through. How do we make peace with our broken pieces without letting them define us?
Yeah, this is really one of my favorite. I have full body chills right now. I equate to broken pieces like a disco ball. A disco ball is made of so many broken pieces. And when a light shines on it, how beautiful it is and how we get to dance under it. And it, has sparkly all over the place. Or a stained glass window in a church, when the light shines through it, how beautiful and magnificent it looks. And I think when you can learn to make peace with your broken pieces and know when you work on and you know who you are and you know that that's just a part of your story, you learn at that moment that you don't bleed on other people that didn't cut you. And you learn that you can still walk with authenticity, knowing that you're just this beautiful little disco ball that gets to go and shine in this world with all your broken pieces, not as a badge of honor, but as broken pieces in your story. Because at the end of the day, we're all broken in this human form, but our souls, as long as we continue to grow and evolve, they get to go and live on forever and ever.
I love it. I love that example. I love a disco ball. So, inspired authority, we've talked about it quite a bit, but it really truly is about leading yourself before you can lead others, right? How did grief force you to truly lead yourself differently? Because we've had a lot of examples here in terms of how you really were able to move forward. But now, how do you truly lead yourself differently?
Well, I would say one, I mean, outside of all the labels and when you're grinding and hustling and doing, it's really easy for us to pinpoint that what other people should be doing. But I think that until you're willing to lead yourself, you can't, again, expect yourself out of other people and then get upset about them and want to hold them accountable with things that you're not willing to hold yourself accountable for. I think for me, it was about intentionality. It was about getting still. It was about turning off the autopilot of life and everyday grind, and it's just going to happen. And these are the things that I have to do, and the structure and the organization and my type A personality. It was learning to flow and just learning to surrender, because if I didn't learn anything else through my grief, it was I have control of nothing. The only thing that I can control is myself and this human experience, and that's it. I can't control anything else. And so people are going to be people. Life is going to life no matter what. So I've just learned to, it's kind of like a prepared notebook that you get to carry around. These are the things that I know have worked for me. These are the things that I know I can go to so that I don't panic when life happens, because life is going to just happen. You can't stop it.
You're right. In life, I think we're all we talk about purpose a lot. In life, we talk about purpose a lot. I will be vulnerable in saying, at night, I pray to find my purpose, but during my day, I work on building my purpose. I'm just so curious. Is purpose something we find or something that we build, or maybe it's a little bit of both?
I really think it's a little bit of both, because there's oftentimes in our human form, we think that we know what our purpose is. And then life has a funny way of showing you, oh, that's just what you thought it was going to be. And we want to plan it all out and we want to do the structure. And I think that's one of the things that has kept me playing small is I got to have it all together and have it perfect. And I need to build my LLC and I need to get all the technology done and I need to do this and I need to do that before I can go. When I get all of that done, I can do this. And I think that that's the way we go through life. When I get there, I'm going to be happy. When I get there or I have that, I'll have joy. And I think it's the same way with our purpose. And I think that when you can just let life happen and you accept it for what it is, your purpose is built organically. But it takes a lot of inner healing and inner work. And I say healing, it's such a buzzword, right? Heal, heal, heal. And there's a lot of people that don't even know how to do that don't even know where to start. And they want something bigger than themselves. And that's why I say, if you just get still for a moment, learn to surrender your baggage, just lay it down and know, and just picture yourself every morning picking up your deck of cards and your backpack of life. Like that visualization alone to me says, it's a choice what I'm putting in this backpack today. Or I can put that on a shelf and I can deal with that later.
Wow. So earlier we talked about alignment and we've talked so much about making decisions, about how we move forward and mindset, and there's so much that goes into it. But I know that you are an arrows up woman, and I need for the audience to understand, what does arrows up represent? Like, what does that mean? And how does it actually come into play in life?
Yeah. So for me, I didn't really even understand the arrows up mentality either until I had a mastermind coach. I think that oftentimes we think of working with other people or coaching and that kind of thing, we see as an expense instead of an investment in ourselves. So if anybody's listening to this and you're looking for a coach of some kind, I think that you do need to inner reflect and find somebody that reflects the life that you want and the life that you are searching for and desiring. And you've got to lock arms with like-minded people. And sometimes there's a energy currency exchange because it's an investment. And with investments, they pay dividends hand over fist if you allow it to. And this is something that came out of this arrows up mentality. I found a stranger on the internet that I resonated with. There has to be a resonance in your body and something that says, that piques a curiosity, if nothing else. because I certainly didn't understand the energetic world when I entered the space. But for me, it certainly didn't. Growing up in the South, we did not talk about chakras. It was not something that was even allowed. That was woo and witchy, and you're just going to go straight to hell if you talk about that kind of stuff. And for me, it was really getting in room spaces and places where I was not the smartest person in the room and learning to dream. I'd never, sure, I would daydream, but I never thought my dreams could ever be a reality. And being around like minded people that know that the most successful people in the world have the same mindset issues and opportunities that every other human does. And so for me, Arrows Up is an intentionality of a mindset that says, I get to choose where I'm going to give my arrows today. And it may be that I'm misaligned today, and it may mean that it's not going to go exactly how I planned, but it's my choice to pull my power, my intention, and everything back to the center of myself to say I have a choice to plug in. I have a choice where I'm plugging in so that I can have that communication and that sense of, and when I say communication, it's easy. It's not just talking. Communication is a full body yes or a full body no, that intuition feeling that you get. It's the resonance that you have in your body. It's the anxiousness or that feeling that you have in your belly that says, ugh, like I'm going to pause, and giving yourself permission to feel all of those things. You know, I've read The Body Keeps the Score and did a lot of work around that. And your body really does keep the score. So if your nervous system's out of whack, you've got to take the pause and just take a few deep breaths just to get back into alignment. So there's so many different ways that I feel like that you can step back into alignment. But if you can picture yourself with just arrows that are flowing through your body each and every day, and if we say that we're on this journey to level up at every opportunity, it is only an arrows up mindset that you can have. Or you can let your arrows go down and you can play small. You can swoop down and just be like, I'm just going to play down here out of safety and chaos. And even if it's safe there, or, oh, my arrows are over here because my family needs this, or my arrows are over here. But knowing that you have the power and the intention to pull them all back up so that they align again and you have an arrows up mindset.
I love it. When I was a little girl, I was told that what I wanted to do wasn't realistic. That's a big part of my story. And I've been able to now use like the limitless mentality now, which is like, if you were limitless, if life was limitless, what would you do? And now I ask people that all the time, you know, like I'm out on a Friday night and I'm like, if you were limitless, what would you do? I think of that as Arrows Up is like thinking about limitlessness, not letting
Dreaming.
life, not like, what was that?
I said dreaming, just
Yes.
dreaming. Like,
Yes. You can dream and things can be a reality. They're only impossible because somebody else probably told you it was impossible, or you haven't seen somebody else do it, so it feels impossible, but it doesn't mean it's actually impossible.
absolutely. Absolutely.
So I know we're coming up on time. I want to ask you one last question and then we'll wrap up. If we could honor Cade in any way on this episode, you know, how would you like to honor Cade as we wrap up our episode today?
Ooh, I think that this is my life's mission in honoring Cade. Cade is a part of my story, but more importantly, he taught me so much in his short but long 21 years that I was blessed to have him in my life. And when I tell you this kid he didn't give two F's about what other people thought, and he was going to do, and he was bound and determined to, he was a Leo, so that he wanted to be center stage of all things, while I'm very type A personality. So you can know that we were very polar opposite. He was organized chaos, and honestly, me just getting comfortable embodying some of those things that he brought to the table, and me being able to keep his legacy alive in being able to share stories about him, even with my grandson, and just honoring like the life that he wanted to live. He was a big dreamer, I mean, even in his short 21 years, he was successful. He wasn't doing the things that I wanted him to do. My desire wasn't for him to go out to the oil field, but he loved it. And just seeing your child's face be happy and joyful after all the tragedy that he had walked through, that he had lived more life than most people in their 40s or 50s. He just took life by the horns and just lived it full throttle. Like I said, he was my biggest pain in the ass from the moment that I was pregnant. Giving birth to him was traumatic. And then just him keeping me on my toes his entire life until the moment, God decided to take him home. And while it's the most painful, heart-wrenching journey I've ever walked, he taught me purpose and love.
Love that.
For
Thank
sure.
you for sharing. Thank you. Now I have to know what your sign is because I don't know what's your sign.
I'm a Libra, so I want everything balanced. And he was not like that at all. Like I
Wow.
would go I would go in his room. I know this is off topic, but I would go in his room, and I can remember as a little boy, I would go in there and show him how to clean his room, and everything, had its place. And I'd say, this is how I want your room. To your point, conditioning and programming, never teaching somebody to trust themselves. And then as he got older, I'd go in there and I would clean his room, and he'd be like, "Mom, I can't find anything." And I'm like, "What do you mean? It's all organized." And I would say, okay, I finally gave up, when he was in his later teens. And he would go in there and I'm like, "How do you find anything in here, Cade? Like, you can't find anything in here." And be like, "It's right here." And I'm like, so yeah, it was interesting times.
Oh
Very
man.
interesting.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for sharing your story. Your story is proof that devastation doesn't get the final word. Alignment does. Thank you for reminding us that while grief may change us, it doesn't get to define us. So, Stephanie, if people want to connect with you, want to learn more, want to follow your journey, where can they find you? Where can they connect? Where can they grab a copy of But God?
Yeah. So my website is stephdmartin.com. And most of the links and everything that you would want and anything that you want to know basically about me right now is on the website. That's the easiest way. And most of my social handles are Steph D. Martin. Steph D. Martin.
Fantastic. Thank you again, Stephanie. It's been a
No,
pleasure.
thank
This
you.
conversation was, oh man, so fulfilling. I'm feeling a little emotional leaving, but in a
Yeah,
very, very good way.
thank
God
you.
brought us together for a reason, and I'm so happy that we got to have this conversation. So thank you again.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure.
Thank you, everyone, for joining today. We'll see you on the next one.